$2 trillion and 25 years of development, and the F-35 waited until March 4, 2026 for its first manned kill. The aircraft that fired the shot was not American but Israeli, an F-35I Adir over Tehran, tracking a Yak-130 trainer. Most assume the F-35 is a fighter that won air-to-air combat decades ago, but its kill record stayed empty until now. This documentary explains how one beyond visual range engagement over Tehran finally validated the central thesis of the costliest fighter program ever built. The F-35 entered development in 2001 as a multinational program promising one airframe configured for 3 branches of service. Lockheed Martin built it around sensor fusion and stealth, treating air superiority as a problem of detection rather than maneuver. The doctrine was simple: see the enemy first, shoot first, kill before the opposing pilot ever detects the threat. 1,100 F-35s entered service across 19 operators since 2015, flying thousands of combat sorties without a single manned air kill. F-35As destroyed attack drones over Yemen in 2025, the platform's first combat shootdowns of any kind. Drones do not count as manned aircraft, and the platform's central thesis remained unproven against a piloted opponent in real combat. That changed in March 2026 over central Iran, during the second Israeli air campaign against Tehran's command infrastructure. An Israeli F-35I Adir intercepted a Yak-130 light combat trainer on patrol with R-73 short-range missiles over Tehran. The Yak-130 was never designed for air combat against fifth-generation fighters and carried no radar to detect the approaching threat. Iran had armed the trainer fleet with infrared missiles to counter Israeli drones and cruise missiles infiltrating Tehran's airspace. Understanding this single engagement requires going inside what makes the F-35I architecturally different from every other fighter in the program. The F-35I Adir is not a standard F-35 with Israeli paint. It carries a sovereign command and electronic warfare suite. Lockheed Martin permitted Israel to integrate independent mission systems unique among F-35 operators, granting the Adir a separate software architecture. Every other partner runs the centralized Lockheed software baseline, while Israel writes code and integrates weapons outside the program. That sovereign access matters because Israeli engagement doctrine relies on hardware nobody else flies and threats nobody else faces. The Adir's core sensor remains the APG-81 radar, paired with a distributed aperture system covering the entire airspace around the aircraft. 6 infrared cameras built into the airframe deliver continuous threat tracking with no blind sectors and without pilot head movement. Sensor fusion combines radar and infrared and data link inputs into one synthetic picture rendered directly onto the pilot's helmet visor. The pilot does not interpret raw data. The aircraft already classifies threats and ranks priorities before anything reaches conscious awareness. That fusion architecture is the entire purpose of the F-35. The airframe is a delivery vehicle for an information system. Stealth provides the time and electromagnetic silence required for the sensor stack to build an engagement before any enemy response. The doctrine demands beyond visual range engagement, where the F-35 fires from outside the opponent's detection envelope using a long-range missile. Standard armament is the AIM-120D AMRAAM, an active radar missile with published range exceeding 100 kilometers. The Israeli Adir can also carry the Python 5 short-range missile and the Rafael Derby family, integrated through sovereign software access. Internal weapons bays preserve stealth signature, and external pylons exist only for permissive environments where radar cross-section becomes irrelevant. The full architecture exists for one moment, the moment when the F-35 sees an opponent coming, and the opponent does not yet see anything. If you want to understand the platform's reshaping modern air combat, subscribe to the channel for one system per documentary episode. But the engagement over Tehran was not a fair test of the doctrine, and that asymmetry is the real story behind the first manned kill. The F-35 program lifecycle cost approaches $2 trillion across every variant and every partner over decades of projected sustainment. $2 trillion exceeds the entire annual GDP of Italy, concentrated in one fighter program with 3 airframe variants. Unit cost for the F-35A reached $82 million per airframe before sustainment over the platform's lifetime. Cost per flight hour exceeds $33,000 across the global fleet, and annual sustainment runs into tens of billions. The Israeli Adir costs even more per airframe than baseline F-35As, because of bespoke software and sovereign integration overhead. Israel currently operates roughly 40 F-35I aircraft, one of the most concentrated F-35 fleets in the world. Sustainment depends on continuous access to American spares and software updates, and most operators cannot obtain them on demand. Now consider the platform on the receiving end of the engagement, the Yak-130 trainer that became the program's first manned kill. Iran procured Yak-130 jets from Russia in 2023 to rebuild a pilot training pipeline degraded by decades of sanctions pressure. The Yak-130 is a subsonic trainer with no onboard radar, equipped only with infrared missiles and a basic targeting computer. Unit cost for the Yak-130 is $15 million, less than one-fifth the price of a single F-35A airframe. $2 trillion in fighter program investment delivered its first manned kill against a $15 million trainer with no radar and no warning. That asymmetry validated the doctrine without ever testing it. And that distinction will define how analysts read this engagement. By March 4th, the second Israeli air campaign against Iran was 4 days old and had already eclipsed Operation Rising Lion. Israeli aircraft had dropped over 4,000 bombs across 1,600 sorties, sustaining combat operations day and night. Iran had begun arming Yak-130 trainers with R-73 infrared missiles to intercept Israeli drones penetrating airspace around Tehran. The trainer fleet flew defensive patrols paired with MiG-29 fighters, providing radar coverage the Yak-130 itself could not generate. An Israeli F-35I pair entered Iranian airspace at altitude and ran an offensive counter-air mission with strike packages over Tehran. Open-source analysis suggests the Adir built a quiet radar track on the Yak-130 from beyond visual range, never illuminating the target. The Iranian pilot flew under MiG-29 radar coverage, but had no onboard system to detect the F-35I's electromagnetic signature. An AIM-120 AMRAAM was almost certainly the weapon employed, fired internally from the Adir's bay to preserve full stealth signature. The missile flew at Mach 4 toward a target whose first warning came when the active seeker activated in the terminal phase of approach. By the time the Yak-130 pilot received any indication of incoming threat, terminal closure had compressed reaction time to seconds. The intercept was instantaneous, and the Yak-130 was destroyed, without the F-35I ever breaking stealth profile or revealing its position. This was the first manned air-to-air kill in the entire history of the F-35 program, achieved 25 years after the start of development. It was also Israel's first air-to-air kill against another aircraft since 1985, when an F-15 destroyed 2 Syrian MiGs. 40 years separated those two engagements, and fifth-generation aircraft rarely face manned opponents in modern air combat. The kill validated the F-35's design thesis, but the asymmetry of the matchup leaves the doctrine unproven against a peer-class fighter. While the air-to-air result was uncontested, the same campaign produced a counter-narrative the F-35 program rarely acknowledges in public briefings. During the same campaign, a US Air Force F-35A made an emergency landing after suspected damage from Iranian air defense fire. Iranian state media released thermal footage allegedly showing a ground-based system engaging the aircraft, with the pilot reportedly wounded. If confirmed, this would mark the first known instance of an F-35 sustaining damage from hostile ground fire in combat operations. Iran fields a layered air defense from Russian S-300 batteries, domestic Bavar 373 systems, and infrared-guided interceptors. Infrared sensors detect heat signature instead of radar return, and that neutralizes the F-35's primary stealth advantage. The F-35 reduces infrared signature compared to fourth-generation fighters, but the reduction is far smaller than its radar cross-section. That asymmetric vulnerability is exactly what infrared-guided air defense systems are engineered to exploit, mostly at low to medium altitude. In one campaign, the F-35 recorded its first manned air-to-air kill, and its first probable hit from ground-based air defense. Both events validate different parts of the platform thesis. The F-35 dominates manned opponents and remains vulnerable to ground-based infrared sensors. Block 4 software upgrades will eventually let the F-35 integrate longer-range weapons and reduce required exposure to defended airspace. Until that upgrade matures, F-35 operators must accept that penetration depth carries serious risk against infrared-guided air defense networks. The Tehran kill will be cited for decades as the moment the F-35 finally validated its engagement doctrine in real combat. The asymmetry will be quietly omitted from program briefings, because in this program, the doctrine matters more than the matchup that proved the doctrine. The next documentary covers an even more dangerous fifth-generation fighter, the Russian Su-57, that outperforms the F-35 on key metrics.